like a Hellcat.
Hello and welcome back to the channel, where once again it's time for another Sega Saturn review, and today we're taking a look at a full motion video game known as The Mansion of Hidden Souls. It was a sequel to a game that was released on the Mega CD/Sega CD, which was also known as The Mansion of Hidden Souls, so it's quite confusing. This game was released in December of 1994 over in Japan, and was followed up with a power release in November of 1995. So I'm going to summarise the story as best as I can. You control a silent protagonist known as June, who has been called to the mansion by the Elder as he wants you to investigate the mysterious events that are taking place within the mansion because of the blood red moon. If you can't reveal the hidden side of the mansion and stop the evil, then the mansion and everyone that dwells inside of it will be destroyed. So once the main menu hits, you'll see you've got Start Game, Continue, and Game Mode. Game Mode enables you to select between easy or normal, with, to my knowledge, the only difference being if you select normal mode, you don't get the control pad overlay during the game when you need to make decisions. So like always, we're going to start with the visuals first, and if low quality FMV and low quality still images are your thing, then this game will be right up your street, because it is not a particularly impressive looking game in any way, shape or form. Obviously it's an early Saturn game, originally released in 1994, and it really is from that kind of previous generation where they were cluttered with these full motion videos as soon as the Mega CD came out and we saw them on there. This is really from that generation. Although it's a sequel to the one that appeared on the Mega CD, I feel the overall quality isn't really that much higher than anything we could have expected from the previous generation. There isn't really anything impressive going on whatsoever at any point in the game. In fact, probably the most impressive part is when the character FMV overlays are talking on top of the background images. I think if that's probably the best way to word it, it's probably the most impressive aspect of the game visually. Other than that, there isn't really anything impressive whatsoever within the Mansion of Hidden Souls.
Clouds always fill the sky, so it was very dark. Everybody stayed very still.
So moving on to the sound effects and music next, and in all fairness, there aren't really that many sound effects at all within the game. You don't really get to interact with many objects, so I feel it would be unfair of me to really criticise the game simply because there isn't too many sound effects within the game. Now in terms of the quality of the voice acting, it pleasantly surprised me because I feel the quality of it is quite good. It's a lot clearer than some of the other speech we've heard in earlier Saturn games, and actually the quality of the voice acting itself is relatively good. It surprised me. It surpasses quite a few other games from this time period, which is quite impressive. The only two characters that probably are a little bit more irritating with their voices are Kathy, a young girl, and your companion Mike, who unfortunately is the voice that you will hear the most in the game because you are a silent protagonist. Now in terms of the actual highlights of the game, the music is probably the main one because the soundtrack for the game is relatively good, and it's quite good when you enter a new area and the track plays, which sort of gives you the personality of the character that you're about to interact with, and I do like that. Now it was quite a challenge to get some musical samples for this game because it's not one of the Saturn games that you can just pop into Windows Media Player and record the tracks off. You've actually got to extract the files by recording the footage, but I have done it, and so I have got some musical samples of this game for you to listen to. So moving on to the gameplay next, and it's quite hard to summarize the quality of the gameplay because there isn't really a whole lot of gameplay here. In terms of the control scheme, it's very easy. You press up on the D-pad to move forwards, you press left to rotate left, and you press right to rotate right. You can press X to bring up the item menu, which you'll occasionally need to do throughout the game to select an item. Pressing A will select yes or a positive answer to any queries or questions you have, whereas pressing C will result in a no or a negative response. Very occasionally you can interact with items and pick items up to add them to your inventory, but the main bulk of the gameplay is simply moving around the mansion room to room and interacting with each of the characters within. If you accidentally go into a room that you're not supposed to, most of the time there will be nothing in there for you to do and you simply need to turn around and move out. Sometimes there'll be a character in there who tells you to come back later, or on some occasions the doors will simply be locked and you won't be able to enter them. There are no surprise deaths or anything like that sometimes you encounter on games like this, and in fact the game feels completely opposite to what the front cover of the box suggests it's going to be like. You look at that case and you think this is going to be a kind of scary horror based game, but it really isn't. It's quite a leisurely paced game, exploring the mansion, finding out why the mysterious things are happening, and there isn't really any danger in my opinion throughout the whole entire game. In fact, it's only when you get to the final cutscene of the game, when you've actually completed the game, that you have a couple of creepy characters that are a little bit strange, but other than that it's a very leisurely paced, easy to play game. There's very little actual gameplay within the game. So in terms of summarizing the gameplay, if you like a game where you can just relax and you don't really have to think really a whole lot about what you're doing, this might be up your street. But if you're into games which involve you doing much more, like the majority of games do, then the chances are you probably won't enjoy the gameplay within the Mansion of Hidden Souls. So moving on to content and lifespan next, and you've got about an hour's worth of playtime here should you play through it from start to finish, doing everything in the correct order. The main bulk of the game simply is listening to the other characters and what they've got to say. If you go out of your way to make negative choices, you can get them to say different bits of dialogue, but a lot of the time you'll then have to re-enter the room and talk to them again and make the correct choice. In terms of actual replay value within the game, there isn't really any at all in my opinion. Yes, there are a few negative endings that you can get, and you have to continually go out of your way to make incorrect negative choices towards certain characters to witness the endings, but they're not particularly fulfilling. They're pretty much just abrupt game over screens, if I'm perfectly honest. So overall, in the content and lifespan department, the Mansion of Hidden Souls isn't particularly strong. So, as always, that leaves us with our two final questions. Is the Mansion of Hidden Souls still worth playing today, first and foremost? And if you've already played this game, then no. There is no reason to go and play this game in this day and age. It wasn't very good then, it's even worse now. But if you have never played this game, and if you like leisurely paced games that are not particularly difficult, where you can just try and enjoy the story and what the characters have to say, then this game may provide you with about an hour's worth of entertainment value. It really might. Now, in terms of whether it's going to make our Sega Saturn top 10, no, it's definitely not. It's simply not good enough. It's not really got enough gameplay of any kind to have any chance of making a top 10 where the games are great playing games. But what it does feature is in our brand new list of the worst 10 Sega Saturn games that I have covered so far. So here we are with our top 10 of worst Sega Saturn games. Number 1, The Crow City of Angels, a truly terrible game. Virtual Open Tennis comes in at number 2, a very, very poor tennis game. Only slightly bettered by Breakpoint Tennis, which is our third worst game I have covered. Number 4, Courier Crisis, a truly, really poor game. Hardcore 4x4. If it ran as well as the PlayStation version, it wouldn't be in this list, but unfortunately it runs terribly. Number 6, Battle Monsters, probably the worst fighting game on the system, or right up there with the worst of them. Number 7, UEFA Euro 96, not a good playing football game. I covered it a long time back. Really not an enjoyable game. Number 8, here is the Mansion of Hidden Souls. It is one of the worst games I've covered, but it's definitely better than those ones higher than it in the list. Number 9, Pro Pinball The Web. The premier reason this is in there, was because, if I remember rightly, it only had one table, and whilst it played okay, just the lack of content means it's in this worst 10 list. And the 10th worst game is Virtual Highlight. Now, a lot of people might have thought this might feature higher in the list, but for me, it's got a certain charm to it. It's got a reasonable lifespan as well, and I do feel overall it is better than the other games and has more to offer than the other games on that list. So these are my worst 10 Saturn games in the series thus far. Let me know your thoughts on my worst 10. Have I got them in the right order? I think a lot of people might rejig this order themselves. This is really just personal taste from my opinion. Or do you think any of the other games that I've covered should be in this list? Let me know with a comment down below. And as always, I'll be back in the near future with another review. Goodbye for now.